All right, it's top of the hour. Why don't we go ahead and get started? My name's Barclay Hill. I am Program Manager Lead for OSG DEP deployment. What that means is Operating Systems Group, Developer Ecosystem, Developer Platform. And with me today, I have Jason from my team.
Hey, everyone.
A little bit about our team. We own deployment, so if you're installing an app from the store or you're sideloading an app with the tools, debugging, anything, any verb that you do with an application, that's using the components our team actually owns. Today we're going to look at what the Converge platform brings to the space of packaging deployment. Jason's going to spend some time walking you through that, some of the features that are new to the 8.1 platform. And when we say 8.1 platform, we're talking about 8.1 Windows clients, tablets, desktop, plus 8.1 phone. And then I'm going to actually come back and talk about changes in the space for Silverlight, how you can actually extend your existing investments on phone to take advantage of key new features in the 8.1 platform. And then we're going to finish off with taking a look at some key features we've made around storage for apps, storage enhancements for devices to reduce the footprint of apps on devices.
Thanks, Barclay. So, hey, everyone. Like Barclay said, my name is Jason Salome. I'm a program manager on the app model team, and I own everything basically that's related to deployment and packaging for applications. And today I'm actually pretty excited to talk to you guys about some of the really great strides that we've made towards converging the Windows and the phone models together to kind of make a better together story. So let's get started. I know there's a lot of content on this slide, but the key thing that I wanted everyone to take away was that universal apps are AppX files. You've heard this word a lot, universal apps. Terry and David Treadwell mentioned this in their keynote. Andrew Klinick, who is another person on our team, also brought this up in his presentation. Universal apps, at the heart of them, are deployed as AppX files. Now, Barclay was going to ask earlier, but we wanted to poll the audience and just see, kind of show of hands, who's developed a Windows Phone app or any type of Zap. Okay. Pretty good number, you guys. How about a Windows Store application? Okay, great. So we have about a 50-50 split. That's good. So for a lot of you, this nothing new here. The universal package format that is part of this convergence really means, especially with this AppX file, that your Windows Phone apps and Windows Store apps are now, as I said earlier, an AppX file. So they have a unified versioning scheme. They have a lot of Converge stuff in their manifest. They have the same identity. They have very similar capabilities. You know, you could have capabilities that are specific to one particular device. A lot of the same declarations in the manifest. But the other thing that's actually really cool is they actually also have the same package format. So you're going to get a lot of similarities that you have with the Windows Store application in your Windows Phone apps now, too. Things like the block map that give you the ability to do incremental downloads and updates, which are super critical for users who don't have a lot of space, or metered network scenarios, so on and so forth, as well as over-the-wire hash validation. Basically, we can validate the bits as they're actually being installed from the store to make sure that there is no tampering or so on and so forth with that application. Now, as part of becoming a universal app, we provided a very good route for the application itself to preserve all of its application data when it becomes a universal application. So for your users, what this means is, as part of becoming a universal app, your user won't see this really jarring experience where, oh my God, all the settings are gone and the app looks like it reset from scratch and now I have to redo everything all over again. So we've actually put a lot of work into making sure that that is a seamless transition for users and that they really don't even know what happens. Now, and lastly, in some cases, you might actually want to take your package and provide some type of customized experience on particular devices and screen sizes. And we're going to look at that a little bit more right now. So The Windows ecosystem is full of tons of devices, small phones, big phones, large PCs, Surface RTs, higher DPI screens, so on and so forth. With the Universal Project, what you're actually able to do is create a single set of shared resources that go in your Universal Shared Project, and those shared resources can then be applied to each individual device that they're applicable to. Basically, without the user ever knowing it, without you ever having to worry about it, you basically just provide these resources, and the Windows Phone 8.1 and Windows 8.1 OS does all this for you. So it's actually able to make sure that the right resource is going towards the right device, which is really cool. Now, this is all basically built off of the app bundle technology, which we introduced as part of Windows 8.1, which is now actually included in the Windows Phone 8.1 OS, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. App bundles themselves are also just AppX files. They have a manifest, they have a block map, they have a signature. We can do all the same good things that we can do on any old AppX file. But these AppX files actually contain a single application package or a set of application packages. And when I say set, I mean you could have a application package, one for each architecture if you're developing native or if you have such reason to do so, or you could have a single neutral application package. And that application package will also have neutral resources. And so the key thing with the neutral resources is that you want to make sure the application package itself has everything it needs in order to be able to run on any particular device. And this is really about fallback. Picture a scenario where the user, for some reason, is not able to get X resource. The main app package itself should have enough data in it to run itself without needing something else. So this was kind of the foundation that we built on. In addition to that, we have additional AppX files that are what we call resource packages. And resource packages can have any number of resource data in them, specifically localized UI strings for any particular language that Windows supports. You can have scale-specific resources for any one of your scale monitors or phones or what have you. And then for the PC specifically, you can have more DirectX capable hardware or more DirectX capable resources that are available to the user. And so the one thing that I also wanted to make sure I illustrate is, and a colleague of mine, Thomas, brought this up in his presentation as well, which is being a great app developer is all about differentiation and all about making your app come to life and really be special and unique on every one of the devices that it goes on. And although it's hard in some cases, it's not impossible, and it's really what makes your app shine. And it's really what makes your app like a great app and what makes it a premier app that everyone wants to get. And this is just one way that you can do that by making a really customized and really specific experience on everyone's device. So just to quickly go over the benefits, the three things that I wanted to touch on specifically were use time. Basically, from the moment that the user clicks install until the moment that they get your application, they're already experiencing a lesser time to basically download and install that app by sheer virtue of not having to download as much content in order to use it. The other thing is, for metered networks, in those scenarios, you're actually downloading less, so the user's having to pay less over-the-air cost. And then finally, just raw disk space. So the Nokia 520 is one of the best-selling phones in its class. It's a 4 gigabyte device, I think. And it's really, really critical for users to be able to have these, be able to use all the apps they want, but maybe not on a 16 or 32 or 64 gigabyte phone. Now, there's cases where a user may say, hey, what if I added a language after the fact or something, or what if I change my phone, or what if I plug in a new monitor that has a higher scale factor? We've handled those cases as well, and everything basically that's newly applicable is treated as an update. So if a developer adds a new resource, if you guys add a new resource to your application, or if a user plugs in something new or adds a new language to their profile, it's just treated like an update. And like an update, they can go and force it right now, or they can just wait for the natural kind of like that night or 24 hours or whenever that update kicks in. And lastly, there actually is, and this is one thing that I'm really happy about, is there actually is zero cost to developers for you guys, actually, if you are already using the resource management system. And that's a big thing that we introduced in Windows 8.1 that abstracts away this concept of resources from you. You effectively just say, I need to use picture number 1, and in your application package, you have picture 1 dash scale 100, picture 1 dash scale 140, picture 1 dash scale 180, so on and so forth. And the system actually is able to understand what each file is meant for and choose the right one for you for any given device or any given circumstance. And so really quick, I just have a quick demo of what it looks like to create one of these universal packages in Visual Studio. And we got Visual Studio up. That's
Gotcha.
great.
I got you, man.
Thanks, Barclay. Barclay's my boss, so I'm trying not to mess this up. Oops. Yeah. So I'm just going to create a new project. And I will create a universal app. And I'll do actually just a blank app. You can see we've been doing a lot of this because we're already up to app 85.
They're all good.
Yeah.
Even the 85th one, they're all good.
So I'm not going to show too much about the development experience, but basically, as soon as this comes up, what I would like to show off to you guys is what the, here we go. Come on. Okay, there we go. All right. So what I was hoping to show was basically just take a quick look at the manifest for each one of these and just basically show you, hey, that the identities are the same and all the stuff that we expect to be there is all the same. So here's the Windows Phone package manifest, and I'm going to view code, and I'm actually going to go over here. And if you see, we have the identity, we have all the standard properties, the prerequisite, the OS min version. So this is actually a pretty key here. This is one of the things that lets us know that this is specific to phone when we submit this to the store. And this line is actually also pretty critical. This is one of the things that helps us identify that this is a phone app and make sure that that migration, when a user goes and updates to a universal app, make sure that we migrate all the application data over. So I'm going to go and actually build this package. I'll create an app package. And do not want to submit to the store. And I just want to also call attention to, this section right here. This was also something that we added in Windows 8.1 for users or developers, who actually, in some cases, you might not want a bundle. And so you have the option to say, you know what, create one if I need one, if I have resources and if I'm using the resource management system, and if I can be optimized, just go ahead and do it. Otherwise, no need. And you can select create one anyways, always, depending on, it doesn't matter what I do, or never create one. So we're just going to leave that as if needed. And then I'm going to create the package. And so while this is building, again, it's going over and it's making sure it's actually validating to see if we're using resources in the system. If we are, it's going to go and build that bundle. But in this case, since we're not, it's just going to build a package. All right. And so here it is. We have the AppX file. I can actually, as you would expect, I can rename this. Oh, come on. As a zip. And I can see it's got the manifest, it's got the block map, it has the resources profile, all the assets, etc. So that's basically just my demo. And I'll hand it back off to Barclay.
All right, thanks, Jason. Okay, so let's talk about extending your existing apps. I missed asking the question earlier. I think we had about 50% of the room have done phone apps. So with Windows Phone 8.1, we made a number of key investments to make sure that you could actually leverage your existing investments. And hence, we have Silverlight 8.1. So Silverlight 8.1 is all the goodness you get in Silverlight 8.0 with access to WinRT features. So you can use WinRT API, or the new APIs delivered with Windows Phone 8.1, without having to write reflection like you might expect if you were doing LightUp. You have a full platform versioning targeting that you could produce a Silverlight application that targets specific 8.1 devices. It is a combined package provisioning app. The reason why I'm saying that is that it is a Silverlight application, but it could also include WinRT extensions. So you can have a foreground app that is your existing Silverlight application, and then you can make use of the new features and multitasking. You can have a WinRT extension. And as part of that, your Silverlight application, when deployed on an 8.1 device, is provisioned as a Windows Store app, a universal app. So although it smells and looks just like a Zap, it's actually deployed as an AppX. That gives you some key benefits. As I'd mentioned, you get access to these features, and you can leverage your existing investment. Now, so you have support for upgrade and migration. So if you already have a Silverlight 8.0 application out in the store and folks have installed it, you can produce and publish an upgrade to it and migrate the existing app storage to your 8.1. So really quickly, benefits before I get into the demo, you can leverage your existing investments, and you can defer and make a decision about when you transition into a universal app, and make that decision based on market share or some other points. So in the demo, put me on number 6. I'm going to take you through converting an 8.1 or 8.0 Silverlight application. So you can find it down here. As you can see, I can create a blank Windows Phone Silverlight application. And when I do so, it's going to prompt me what platform I want to target. And for the sake of the demo, I'm going to start off with an 8.0 and walk you through this. It's going to take a second. Okay, so while this is coming up and it's painting the designer and rendering that, so all the goodness you had with Silverlight 8.0 is here. I'm just basically starting off at this point as a reference point. So what you have here is the WM map manifest. And that's the declarative manifest that describes your Silverlight application. So essentially, everything that you had there previously is there today. Now, if I wanted to take this existing app, let's just imagine I have a really, really compelling app. I can right-click on this application, and I can say retarget to Windows Phone 8.1. And it's going to give you a bunch of fine print, a forward link to where you can read more about what this means and what features you can take advantage of. But I'm going to go ahead and click yes. And so once that's finished, what you're going to get a number of things in the project system. So one of the things it's going to do, it's going to move your platform versioning targeting, well, that was a lot of ings, from 8.0 to 8.1. So you still have the WM map manifest. And if I was to show you the XML here. So basically you have your product ID here, runtime, your app platform version. In the designer, you have a couple of other key things that make it 8.1. Now, within this, let me give us a little bit more screen real estate. As I'd mentioned before, it's a combined package. So it basically can have the payload of Silverlight, but it could also have WinRT payload as well. So down below, you have an AppX manifest as well. It's the same, it's a subset in the designer of the AppX manifest that you get out of Universal Project. And if I was to open this up, it describes the declarative model of an AppX package. Now, I can make use of this. Now, let's just say that I upgraded my Windows 8.0 application to an 8.1 to take advantage of a specific feature. Maybe it was just that I wanted to target it to only 8.1 devices. Once you convert your application, there is nothing that you need to define as far as a new feature within this to have a working 8.1. The AppX manifest captures the WinRT features you plan to take advantage of that you actually have to declare. As Jason demoed earlier, just like the Universal project for phone, there's a phone identity element in here. It contains the product ID for your application as well as the publisher ID. And that's there to support this migration. Now, you can migrate from, on a device, when you're targeting an update, you can migrate from Silverlight 8.0 to 8.1, and from 8.1 Silverlight to a Universal project. But out of that upgrade, you cannot down level, meaning if you've targeted 8.1 Silverlight and you upgrade your users, there's no way to actually take them back down to an 8.0. It's a one-way migration. The phone product ID and publisher ID is what actually pulls those together, and that's the identifier in the phone store. We're working on pulling the back ends of the stores together, but that's basically the strong identifier that pulls them together there. Now, I'd mentioned is that really the AppX manifest that's inside the Silverlight application is for the modern features. Thomas Fennell delivered a session, and Matt Heidinger on tiles. Now, in Silverlight 8.1, you have a choice. You can actually use Silverlight tile templates and notification service, which is MPN, or you can move it to WNS. And when I do that, as you can see, the tile templates and the WM map manifest actually are removed. And what that basically means is that when I've made that choice, I'm going to be using WPN notification service, client-side APIs, as well as the WinRT Windows Store tile templates. So you would actually define those within your AppX manifest. Go back into the XML here. Couple more things here. As you can see, is when I do that, I have Square 150 logo and so on. When I upgraded my Silverlight application, these were added to my my project system. Now, if I was going to use MPN, those only just need to be there because they're referenced. Now, I could go back through it and say I wanted to use my existing tiles, just reference those. But it gives you an ability to actually make use of these new tile templates and so on. So one other thing in all Silverlight applications is you'll see, I'll do this from the designer. All of them have a background task, or they may have more than one. This AG host background task. Now, I'd mentioned earlier is that when it's deployed and provisioned on 8.1 device, it is a ZAP, it is Silverlight, but it's provisioned as a universal app or an AppX. And this AG host, when you've been debugging previously with Silverlight 8.0, every time you hit F5 and we bootstrapped it to the device and deployed it, you probably notice in the output SPU is that there is a task host, and that's the host process for Silverlight. When you're working with Silverlight 8.1, this host is actually AG host background host. And really what the main distinction is you kind of look at this as this is Silverlight running on top of the Converge platform. And so it's running inside of its own hosting process, and it could basically reach out and have WinRT extensions of its own. And so I'm going to actually show you that here. So I hit F5. While that's coming up. We'll get a little bit later to another demo to talk about a storage feature, but what you'd find while this is coming up is The new features that we've added are in the 8.1 Silverlight project. Essentially, 8.0 Silverlight is essentially the same feature set that you had previously. Now, you can use the new tool set for Silverlight 8.0, but for 8.1, you need the RC for now. This is going to come up now once the debugger starts. Okay, we're deploying. Launching AG host. Okay, there's our app. As you can see, AG host is now running, and it's hosting the Silverlight 8.1 application. And so since I switched it to WPN notification service, I don't have anything interesting or compelling in my tiles, but that's basically a Windows Store tile templates are actually being used, and so on. So I'm going to stop debugging. Now, one more thing, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Jason. There's a couple of features in the Converge platform you can take advantage of, and you might have seen these in the keynote. Shared entitlements, where you have an application that is purchased for one form factor, and the user doesn't have to pay for another. And the way that that's actually enabled is through product family names, or the strong identifier for the package. Silverlight 8.1 can take advantage of these as well. As we've seen, it has an AppX manifest. When you get prepared to submit your upgrade to the store, you have an ability to reserve product family name. What this enables you to do is to have shared entitlement, share some of the notifications across platforms, as well as participate in some key features around backup, restore, roaming scenarios. So when you go through this process, what you'll see is that, although Jason didn't demo it to you, is that Universal Project has the ability to do store linking. Now, Silverlight 8.1 doesn't have that, but as a part of the submission process, you're going to have an ability to reserve a PFN, or a product family name, that you can add that. And you would do that by editing the manifest here. And for that, that's the demo for this guy.
Thanks, Barclay. How's everyone doing? Yeah, anyone have any questions, by the way, before we continue? Take maybe a couple. No? Okay. So before we get started with this next section, I was hoping to tell a little story. Back when we were kind of designing Windows 8.1, we started thinking pretty vast about what is the kind of the next set of features that we wanted to improve. And one of the key principles that everything we kind of based our 8.1 work on was that the user needs to have a premium, like first best-in-class experience when acquiring your apps, because first impressions really do matter, especially if it's a difference between a couple minutes or 15 minutes from bringing down your application and getting it running and getting immersed in it, and or that could mean the difference between them installing it and forgetting it. So we did some data analysis, and what we actually found was pretty interesting. So on a given user's machine, let's say that this is your store application. Oftentimes, a lot of the applications that folks are developing will use something like an ad platform, a UI framework, some common runtime or library, etc. So the analysis that we did actually showed that on average, about 25% of all the other apps on that same system had that same exact file. And we started wondering, why are we letting this happen? Why are we letting this file be duplicated over and over and over again, and effectively, letting the user incur that hit on the system? Now, that file being there is actually a good thing from the developer side, because hey, you guys are leveraging common code, and you're not, it's all about reuse, and it's all about making use of the web and open source, which is great. But from the user side, we wanted to actually, we wanted to reduce the time that it took to acquire these apps. And so one of the things that we kind of implemented and now is extended into the Windows Phone 8.1 OS is the ability to optimize the download in these cases. And so I'm going to give a quick kind of visual demo of what this looks like. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and for this hypothetical scenario, I'm going to install Microsoft Mahjong and Microsoft Solitaire. Now these are two games that are both made by the same developer, so there's probably going to be some common files. So the first thing I do is I install Mahjong. Mahjong brings down several files, an app platform, and a game engine. And so the next thing that I do is I say, okay, I'm going to install the Solitaire app. So I hit install. And one thing that I slightly overlooked, or sorry, didn't mention as part of the previous install was during the install itself, we bring down a file called the block map. And this is something that I alluded to earlier during the first part of the presentation. The block map basically gives us the ability to uniquely identify files down to a 64 kilobyte range. And so basically using this block map, we can say, hey, you know, there's something fishy here. It looks like there's some duplicate files that we have between these two packages. So instead of downloading the same files over and over and over again, we ought to just share them. They ought to be just common files that can be used by both applications, such that each app doesn't know each app is basically saying, hey, I'm just using my own file, and that's fine. But from the user perspective, he's like, cool, I'm saving disk space, and then everyone's happy. And so that's basically what we ended up doing in Windows 8.1, and is now as part of Windows Phone Blue 8.1, is we create these shared files. Now, the next logical question is, okay, what happens when one of these files actually gets updated? So for this case, I'm actually going to go and I'm going to update the Solitaire app. And as part of updating the Solitaire app, the game engine is actually going to change. And when that change happens, as you'd expect, the shared file no longer becomes shared. Each app gets its own version again. And then in later versions, if, for example, Mahjong updated that game engine, then that file would become shared again. So for Windows 8.1 and Windows Phone 8.1, this exists for apps which are acquired from the store. In the Update 1 for Windows 8.1, we've extended it to all enterprise apps or apps that are signed but not coming from the store directly. Now, the benefits for this particular feature, again, it goes back to the three things that I was talking about earlier, which is the user gets to your app faster. He gets immersed in your app faster. She can use your app faster. They start, interacting with it earlier. They're getting less over-the-air bandwidth consumption, which is really important in places like India and developing countries where bandwidth costs a lot, and sometimes you won't see a Wi-Fi hotspot for weeks. And then the last thing is just consuming raw disk space. Again, the Nokia 520 is best-in-class kind of device, most selling device in its class, and it's only a 4 gig device. The typical space savings that we've seen actually in Windows 8.1 are on the order of 25%. So these are not small numbers by any means. It's something really, really important, and it's something that we're actually really happy that we have been able to kind of converge over to the Windows Phone 8.1 OS as well. And lastly, I'm sure you guys all like free stuff, and I love saying this, but this is also kind of something that you get for free when following best practices. And what I mean by best practices is when you're actually going and pulling an open source library, or if you have precompiled libraries that you're sharing between your apps, just make sure that if you're pulling that open source library like jQuery or something, just don't modify it. Just keep it the same. If everyone keeps all their files the same, then that file gets shared across. And if there are any updates that are released to that file, just make sure you get the latest version, and hopefully everyone will do the same, and that savings will be passed on to the user. Same thing goes with your precompiled libraries. Just making sure that those precompiled libraries are updated in all of your apps will actually allow the user to have a better experience when acquiring more than one of your apps. So I think this is a really great thing, and I'm really happy to tell you guys that it's now on Windows Phone 8.1 as well as Windows 8.1. So I'll hand it back over to Barclay for another really cool feature.
I think we had a question over here. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
yeah. If the files from Unity are actually...
Just repeat his question, please.
Oh, sorry. So the question was, if you have 2 games built on the Unity framework, will this feature be able to take advantage of that? And the answer is, if the 2 games contain files that are identical, absolutely. It's not really based on any particular set of files. You could have 2 images that are the same. Actually, one thing that we saw common between some of our pre-installed apps was they were sharing a lot of the same images. And so we were able to save like tens of megabytes just by deduplicating images. Yep. Are you talking about the whole payload?
Repeat the question, please.
Yes. Sorry, Barclay. You guys are getting me in trouble. So the question was, does it download the full AppX file over again? It downloads whatever it needs to. So if there's a file that's shared, it will create basically a hard link to that file from the other package so that it effectively looks like the whole package is there, but really it's not, if that makes sense. On the first install? No, so if this is a fresh file that's never been seen before, then the file comes down. Was that your question?
No, I meant the first install of the second app.
In that case, no, then it will not bring down that file. Yeah. Sure. So the question was, is there any implication when using make AppX to create the package? Does that change anything? The answer is no, because the files themselves don't change. We don't actually modify the files as part of creating the package. The only thing that could be kind of dicey is when you're talking about precompiled libraries, as even if you don't change anything, just the act of recompiling could change a timestamp, therefore change a file, therefore the whole thing is technically different. So we're not able to leverage this enhancement. So the next part of the question was about PRI files. Are you talking specifically about updates moving from one version to another, or are you talking about 2 separate apps? If the file's identical, it will be hard linked. Yep.
Okay, we're doing good on time. We'll have a time at the end
Yeah, sorry.
to kind of go through a summary and answer lots of questions. All right.
Go ahead. You're up.
All right, so moving on with storage improvements. I'm really excited about this one. I worked on this one myself. I love the feature. So we did a lot of work in Windows Phone 8.1 to enable users to install applications on SD. And not just enable it, but to make it actually work pretty good. Pretty good. As Jason mentioned before, is out of all the Windows Phone devices, Windows Phone Nokia 520 is taken off quite a bit in relation to the other models. This is a low cost. You okay, man? It's a low cost device. It's a 4 gigabyte device that has an SD slot on it. Now, after you're right out of Ubi is out-of-box experience. Right out of Ubi, you're dealing with probably about a gigabyte of storage left on that actual device. After you sync your email, and if you get the kind of email that I get, you probably have quite a bit less than that. You're probably dealing with something around 500, 700 mega. So there's no asphalt for you on that device. So enter apps on SD. I can actually pop a 64 gigabyte card into an SD slot on a 520, and I can install apps. I can store my pictures, my videos. I can install apps there. I can move apps from the device over to the SD card. And the experience is pretty good. It's pretty good. We're going to take a look at it in a minute. So what we specifically enabled, an application to be installed on SD. We did not enable any licensed application sharing via SD. So an application that's installed to SD is basically bound to a user to a device. So the application itself is encrypted. Any data that it writes on the SD card is encrypted. And that's specific to that application. So you can't have one application that's running on SD that can read another application's data. We preserve the file system, so it's still FAT32, exFAT, depending on the size of the card. And this is key, and we actually did a lot of work to pull this off. The reason why we wanted to keep it this way, we didn't want to format NTFS because we didn't want to break the media sharing scenarios. So you put your pictures on it, you put videos on it, and you install apps on it. If we made it NTFS, nothing else would be reading the SD card. So we kept the file system as FAT to enable those scenarios. In some geographies, it's actually quite common. Data connection is not like it is here, North America, and some other geographies where is that you snap a picture, you want to share it with your friends, you actually send it over the wire. Many geographies, they actually snap a picture, have it on SD, and they swap the SD to somebody else's device to actually share a picture. So that is a very meaningful scenario. So I mentioned that the app itself is encrypted. It's on the SD card. The file names and the directory names are not. So those are plainly readable. And in fact, if you were to pop out an SD card and knew what you were looking at and mount it on a PC, you can basically see the directory names and the file names under the application. The reason why I point that out is don't write something to your application's isolated store that is unlock whole game, right? You don't want to do that. That one's easy to figure out is that, well, I could just bypass in-app purchase and just have a file inside of this that says unlock whole game, and I can get it for free. So don't do that. But really, it's about any app file that's under it, either the apps that writes data to it or the application's binaries itself are encrypted on the SD card. Now, for the developer scenario around this is that, no, not yet. Developer scenario around this is you can opt out. We don't want you to. We want as many apps installed on SD as possible. So the reason why you would want to opt out, maybe you have an application that has a dependency on a specific feature that's not supported on an SD card. And these are very few and far between exceptions. Really, it's going to be a native application that's using a file system API that has a dependency on NTFS that, as a developer, you probably didn't know that it had at the time you implemented the app. You may want to opt your app out of SD so you can update it so it does work on SD and support FAT file system. But essentially, I'll show you in the demo in a minute, is you opt out through the manifest and you resubmit your application. All apps are opted in, regardless of what the platform version is. So a Windows Phone device, Apps on SD feature is available to all Windows phones with an SD slot. They would be able to install the application on SD. Okay, so the benefits. So as I'd mentioned, is that it's available to all devices. And I guess I'm pushing on that because for some competitors, it's actually an OEM decision based on what device manufacturer you buy it from, whether or not they enable this feature. This was standard for the OS and available to all devices. Users can expand their application storage. And this is key. Applications keep getting larger and larger. So it's not just the size of the application itself when it's resting when it's installed. It's actually the process of us bringing it down, decrypting it, exploding it, installing it. So there will be points at that where the peak of that disk size, it actually exceeds the size of the package quite a bit. So allowing you to do this on SD and the whole operation runs on SD allows you to acquire applications. Nothing's more frustrating, and I've had this experience before on other devices, is that my device is almost out of capacity and I pop a 64 gigabyte SD card in it, I still can't install apps. That makes no sense. For this, almost the entire operation happens on SD, so the app is truly installed on SD. And developers can expand their reach into the low-cost devices. As I mentioned before, a 4 gigabyte device doesn't have a huge amount of disk space available to it. Depending on what type of game or app you create, like a game or so on, this could be a key difference between that user being able to acquire your app or not. So with that, let's take a look at a demo. Okay, before I get into the device side demo, let me show you where this is. So for a Silverlight 8.1 application, you opt your application out. Right here, prevent deployment to SD card. So if we have time, I'll actually demo that in a sideload scenario. But really what this is it's a publisher policy, is that when you submit your application to the store and during the ingestion, that metadata extracted and it's stored with the application cloud side. We did a fair amount of work to look at is that if you truly had a reason to actually opt your app out, we've covered all of our bases on if the existing app was not opted out, but you're updating an app that is opted out and that app already was installed on SD, what happens? So we covered all those scenarios to make sure that we could adhere to the publisher policy on it. We don't anticipate too many apps being opted out, but that's what it is. So this prevent deployment to SD card, that's really a handshake with store client that runs on the device. So that policy is enforced at that time and has less to do with actually what's in the package. But having said that, let me pull up my Dove. Not that guy. So what I have here, I have a Windows Phone 8.1 device, low-cost device, a nondescript low-cost device. Low cost, emphasize low cost. I have this too, 1520 has an SD slot. That wouldn't be that compelling to actually show you a demo. It's not fair. But this guy right here, as you can see that top tile there that's flipping around, is basically showing you that StorageSense, what the available space is on the device. So it shows that I have a little bit more than 1 giga, and I have an 8 gigabyte card on this. If I come into the app, basically it'll show me the breakdown of what the storage is on it. Just like with the other experiences about what you define as where you want to store that type of media, it's kind of a set it and forget it. And essentially it's just like you can in previously with Windows Phone 8, you could make the setting for your pictures. You can now do it for your applications. And it's right here. Now, when I set this, it just means for every future install, where is it actually going to go? But I'm actually going to drill into this and show you what I have on here. So I have one in the oven already. I didn't want you guys to sit patiently while I downloaded Halo. But I've got Halo here on the device already as well as OneDrive installed on it. One other comment is its SD card is kind of a pay-as-you-go feature. Your mileage is going to vary based on the card or your user's cards that they select. It's fairly easy to purchase a card that does not perform very well. And it's probably going to be at the lowest price point that you could probably find. An average card is going to perform very well. A high-end card is going to delight you. But really, when it comes down to this, you pay for what you get. On this one, I'm running a mid-range card. I won't tell you what the manufacturer's name is, but it's not a Blazer. It's pretty decent, but it's very average. Before I get into the demo, I want to go ahead and acquire an application. I'm going to go to the Windows Phone store. Wow, Halo's on sale, guys. Just $1.99.
I'm going to buy it right now.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and I can't go off-roading on this because I have to have permission on what apps actually show. So I'm going to actually install Wordament while we're actually talking and looking at Halo. And I apologize about the network connectivity. Okay. So as you remember, I had set this install on SD previously, so I'm just going to hit install, and that's going to run in the background. All right, so it's pending, downloading 20 mega. And while that's happening, I'm actually going to run Halo. You guys get to see how bad I am at this game. So I had mentioned this is a low-cost device. This is one core, 512, actually. Very low-end components in the device. So I'm going to get through this, and apologies that we don't have sound. I've tried different ways of actually doing this, playing it on my screen and on the device. It's better when I play it on the device. One comment as I'm setting this up is you'll find is games actually play very well. It's because they're designed like this already, is that when they start up, they're basically reading what they need to execute, and they limit the amount of time they actually go back to the disk and read. They do that so you have a good experience, whether or not you're running on the device or previously on other devices. So you'll find is that it works very well. Also, media consumption devices or apps also run quite well. One of the things that you'll notice that's probably out of everything that you might run into is that...
Dude, you're a terrible shot.
I am. We're the Grets. Come on, guys. All right. So I'm not going to spend 10 minutes playing this. But as you can see, it's pretty fluid. It's pretty smooth. It's running on SD. So I'm going to abort that, abort the mission. Going back to what I was saying earlier, now an app that writes lots to the SD card or to the disk, you might see degradation in that, and that's where a higher performing card is going to help you, right? But honestly, I'd have to make the argument as an app that does lots of writes is probably not going to perform that well on internal either. But anyway, so Word a Mint, we just installed this while we were actually setting up here. And I can just start that up. And this guy runs really, really well. Oh, I need a swipe. So while we were working on this feature, we've gone through and tested many, many, many apps. Honestly, the only issues that we've found around compatibility are really around file system APIs, and it's usually a native application that will run into it. So you see I required this app. It's fine. I can play. Actually, I'm a little bit better than this at this game, but I don't want to embarrass myself. But anyway, how are we doing on time? We have about 7 minutes. Okay. Well, let's go back to questions, and then I might show you a little bit how the opt-out scenario. Any questions? Yes, sir. Okay, so the question from the gentleman is what happens to my device when I pop out the SD card? I called this during product development, don't gunk up my phone, really, because a lot of our experience is based off of tiles. You spend a lot of spend a lot of time configuring your start screen. Actually, what happens is when you eject that card, and devices are changing. Most devices today, you'll have to pop the battery out to pull the card, but many devices are actually starting to move it along the side of the chassis. In other markets, you'll see as competitor devices actually make it way more accessible. It's right there on the side. But when you pop that out, we terminate the app. If there's no storage for the app to actually write to, if it's going to shut down, there's nothing graceful about it. So if you pop the card out, we terminate the app from running. We persist all the shell arrangement, all the tiles that are in the visual elements. So all the placement is there. And one of the things that you'll actually see in the app list, it'll say reinsert your SD card. We spent a fair amount of time around on this to make this experience right. It enables a scenario is, let's just say that you have a 520 or a low-cost device, and you have more than one card. I can have a 4 gigabyte SD card, and I'm running a couple of games on that one. I can pop it out, and I can have another card that is running a couple of games. It's also around this idea is that if you're in a media sharing scenario, you still want to use your device once you pop that SD card out. So most of that experience is actually preserved. Now, one thing that I will say is that a few apps on the device are actually opted out already. These are like your email client. You don't want your email client running on SD because when you pop the SD card out, is that no background process can run. So when I said that the application in its entirety is installed on SD card, we meant it. I mean, the whole thing is there. So there are a class of applications that are not suitable for SD if you are in media sharing scenarios and plan to take it out. There's also the scenario of, oops, I lost my card. So we have a scenario, we have an experience that supports that. We'll keep the anchors, the metadata that's on the device for the application around until you say uninstall it. Once you remove it, if the card shows back up, it's too bad. It's gone forever. So this pairing on the device is specific to the user and is specific to the app and the device. As long as those anchors stay in place, you'll be able to pop the card in and out, and it'll persist and come back. Yes? No, so the encryption is actually, the keys are matched for that specific instance of the device and application and user, so there's no way to get actually the data. Now, having said that, we have backup and restore that have the ability to back up the application and install it and restore that data. I have one more slide, and it's quite an eye chart. All right. This is basically, we cover a lot of information on the packaging and deployment. We got about 3 minutes left. I'm going to run through a little bit of this. I've given this talk a number of times, different venues, and everybody said, well, what'd you say? What, which package, what feature? So I'm going to run through this really quickly. So the platform targeting is along the top of it in the version of the application. On the left-hand side, we have Zap Phone, and then Zap 8.1, AppX Phone, and AppX Windows. So package encryption, we didn't really hit on this earlier, is that just like Windows Client, AppX packages are not encrypted. Silverlight applications are, 8.0, 8.1, they are, but AppX packages are not encrypted. Package bundling feature is a unique feature to universal apps. Silverlight 8.1 do not have this feature. It's a packaging feature, it's specific to the packaging format. I have on here debug package signing. While it might not be a big deal, there is a distinction between how this behaves for phone and how it behaves for Windows Client. When you're debugging and you're sideloading applications for phone, there is no additional signing. There is no self-signed cert that's associated with that app. It's essentially unsigned. And the reason why it's like that is the device already has an unlock mechanism for you to deploy apps to. Differential download and update. This is the killer feature that Jason talked to earlier. This is updating only what's changed in the package, which is very key for mobile. Today Silverlight applications pull the whole application over the wire, even for just fixing a string bug, like in your localization, it'll pull the whole package down. With AppX, it just only pulls down the delta, which is a killer feature. Application file single instancing. This is also what Jason covered. This is basically single instancing the files on the device and not storing repetitive files, like the gentleman's question around, does it work with Unity? Yes, it would work with Unity. That's specific for AppX as well. AppX packages enable this because of the block mapping and a lot of the deployment pipeline that's in place for that. Formal versioning requirements, we kind of glossed over this, but basically is that there's one thing to watch out for is that as you're going through the 8.1. If you've been developing for Phone's versioning mechanic was really a version number for you as the developer. With 8.1, the versioning scheme is formal now. That means for every update, it needs to be incremented. You'll see this in your own testing to test your migration upgrade scenarios, but we'll fail it if the version is not higher, which is really good because it enables some other scenarios we don't have time to talk to today about making a distinction to avoid down-leveling an application or downgrading it, and that's something we never like doing. And external volume SD app installation is only unavailable on Phone today, and that's the last one that we hit. And we're right at the end of this. So here's our email address. If you send email to this, it'll actually come to me or Cliff on my team or Jason. If you have a question, follow-up question, feel free to email this, and we'll get back with you guys, answer any question.
Take a picture of this. I'll move to the next slide so we can get the feedback slide with a little QR code.
And please, 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 folks, fill out the feedback.
Yes.
We have a gentleman's challenge going on with my boss right now.
Yep.
We need to show him up. So tell us what you like, what you didn't like, something that if you wish we would have covered, or send us that to the email address.
So the address is askappax@microsoft.com.
And we'll be around for a couple of minutes and out in the hall. Thanks, everybody, for showing up.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your Build conference.